Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the 8th virtual Palm Beach International Equestrian Center educational series presented by Additives here at the Winter Equestrian Festival for week 8. My name is Miranda Tiona, and I am your returning host and educational series coordinator here for the 2021 season at the Winter Equestrian Festival. I am delighted to introduce today's topic and speaker. Today's educational series session is sponsored by Premier Equestrian, and the topic is footing facts, which will be an in-depth look at the effects footing services have on our horses. This lively session will include information about sand characteristics, footing products, and types of services for different disciplines. Heidi Zorn is the president and co-founder of Premier Equestrian, a company that specializes in equine sporting goods for a variety of equestrian disciplines, including dressage and show jumping. Premier Equestrian is one of the largest North American distributors of arena footing products and equestrian services. A lifelong equestrian herself, Zorn's constant drive to learn more about equine wellness and ways to keep horses happy and healthy has made her a sought-after lecturer on equine biomechanics and the effects of footing on equine health and safety. She is recognized as one of the leading footing experts in North America. Quoted widely in equine media, Zorn's expertise has been published in Riding Magazine, Dressage Today, and Underfoot. When she's not analyzing sand samples, testing out new footing products, or educating equestrians about the importance of proper riding surfaces, you'll find Zorn traveling the globe with her husband, Mark, who is the Premier Equestrian CEO, or riding her horses, Primo and Izzy. Now, without further ado, I will welcome Heidi Zorn to unmute herself and begin prepping her very interesting presentation on such a very touchy and very important topic for all equestrians.
Hey, I'm Heidi, and I can't see the raise of hands, but I like to always ask how many of you felt like riding surfaces have affected your horse. In today's discussion, my hope is to shed some light on footing surfaces and how important it is for our horses. Again, my name is Heidi Zorn, and I'm the president and co-founder of Premier Equestrian. I want to share my personal experience of how footing affected my horse. I've been studying riding surfaces for over 15 years. Our company has helped thousands of riders, trainers, and facilities improve their surface. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to my advisory panel. These people have helped us tremendously blaze the trail for more information about footing. Mark Olesen is a geologist and civil engineer who has helped us develop specifications as it applies to aggregates in the equestrian surfaces. Dr. Hilary Clayton has pioneered much of the research on equine biomechanics and the interaction with surfaces. Hilary was a contributor to the FEI Equine Surfaces White Paper. Her efforts continue today in helping us to advance the understanding of biomechanics in equestrian surfaces. Bob McDonald. He was an early adopter of synthetic surfaces and the importance of maintenance. Bob has worked on perfecting his surfaces for many years and understood the importance of proper footing for Olympians Debbie McDonald and Adrian Lyle. Stephen Peters was great. He helped identify through his feel and connection with the horse what he was feeling in a proper surface. By analyzing different surfaces that he was performing on, we were able to dissect what sand and footing products work together. I would like to share my story and how I got started thinking about riding surfaces. But first, meet Serrano. Serrano came to me as a young horse and earned a very special place in our hearts. He was a very cool horse. He became our poster child, and we invested lots of time and money in training and cultivating his talent. Somewhere around 10 years of age, his behavior changed and his work started to decline. He became sluggish and resistant, unwilling to move forward. He had no suspension, sporadic lamenesses, inconsistent lead changes. We couldn't advance our training. He didn't want to bend his hocks. He had no fluidity. It was very emotionally stressful for him as well as for me. So I invested in all sorts of medications and therapies. This is when I started paying attention to the surfaces he was being ridden on. On grass, he felt great, springy, willing to sit, go forward. In sand arenas, he would jog shorter than a 12-hand pony. So we started working with sand, footing additives, and grooming maintenance. Serrano became part of the R&D department. We experimented with different additives, different sands, and grooming techniques. Our research led to investigate why some sands were loose and why some sands were stable or compact. Surface stability changed with water and grooming. We started testing different footing additives to stabilize or to cushion. These changes to the surface helped keep Serrano going, and he continued as our arena tester for 6 more years. However, his early training and work on deep surfaces took their toll. At age 16, we started hock injections, which resulted in a joint flare and infection. This was a heartache and expense. He eventually recovered enough for a nice retirement and lived for 9 more years. We are forever grateful to our Serrano and what he has taught us about footing surfaces. That was a huge financial and emotional impact. Serrano was retired 10 years before his time. There are many things that can injure our wonderful horses. I don't ever want footing to be one of them again. Here are the topics I will discuss today, and I hope to help give a better understanding of a good riding surface. Equine biomechanics, different surfaces for different disciplines, define sand and footing products, the importance of water, construction, and maintenance. Many of our views and theories in my presentation have been taken from this document. This study is by far the best information I have encountered on the subject of equestrian surfaces. The FEI is working to educate the industry. However, I feel horse sport surfaces are still in their infancy compared to the NFL or the PGA and what they put into their athletes. We have much more to learn. You can all obtain a free copy by visiting this link. So I'd like to share with you our biomechanics video.
3 phases occur during each stride: the landing phase, the loading phase, and the rollover push-off phase. During the landing phase, the hoof touches the ground and comes to a stop. As the hoof stops, sliding forward and downward into the surface, bones in the leg collide. Concussion can cause shock waves and vibrations to be distributed throughout the ground and leg. During the loading phase, the whole hoof is in contact with the ground, carrying the full weight of the horse and rider. The fetlock, flexor tendons, and suspensory create a shock-absorbing effect. Pressure under the frog stimulates blood circulation through the hoof. The loaded weight increases depending upon movements such as collection, landing from a jump, or galloping. During the rollover push-off phase, the heel rotates off the ground, rolling over the toe for push-off into the next stride. An ideal arena surface allows horses to move efficiently through these phases. The surface should minimize concussion, absorb shock, provide support, and return energy back to the horse. To accomplish this, the surface should have a combination of firmness, cushioning, cupping, rebound, and grip. Here are these characteristics in more detail. The firmness or hardness of the surface affects the amount of support and how the shockwave forces are distributed during the landing phase. While a hard, compact surface offers a high amount of support, it does not aid in absorbing impact shock. Bones and joints in the hoof and leg are forced to absorb this shock, causing horses to modify their stride or jumping form to avoid the sting. Examples of a hard surface include concrete or packed clay. A soft or loose surface, like dry rolling sand, absorbs shock well but lacks support. Overextending the heel or toe damages supporting tendons and ligaments. Muscles and respiration are also fatigued. A surface with ideal firmness offers support with minimal concussions to the bones and joints, and is soft enough to aid in absorbing shock. Cushioning refers to how the arena layers dampen shock during the loading phase. A compacted surface lacks cushion. The arena layers don't aid in relieving stress and shock when the hoof is loaded with the horse's weight. A soft, deep surface has too much cushion. The surface will shift under the foot, causing the horse's body to work harder for support and energy. Soft tissues become overloaded, which can lead to inflammation and other damage. An ideal amount of cushion should distribute shock through the arena layers and provide enough resistance under the hoof for the horse to balance and move into the rollover push-off phase. During the loading phase, the hoof capsule expands. Pressure under the frog and digital cushion aid in supplying blood to the structures in the hoof capsule. As the weight is released, the hoof contracts, pumping blood up the leg and through the body. This process is called hoof mechanism. The surface under the foot influences hoof mechanism. On a hard, compacted surface, the frog has minimal contact, hindering hoof mechanism even further. The amount of weight over the hoof capsule forces blood only through the large veins. The lack of blood flow through the small veins is damaging to the hoof capsule and can lead to problems like navicular disease and laminitis. A soft surface will cup under the foot but may not provide enough resistance and pressure to maximize hoof mechanism. To benefit from hoof mechanism, the surface should cup into the sole and collateral grooves of the frog. Resistance in the surface supports the weight and force placed under the foot, while the pressure under the frog and digital cushion encourage blood flow through the hoof capsule. Closely related to cushioning is responsiveness and rebound. This refers to the resiliency of the surface to return to its original form, returning energy after the weight of the horse is applied. A stiff and compacted surface rebounds energy too quickly, causing additional shock and vibrations to be absorbed by the horse. A deep, dead surface rebounds energy too slowly. The horse must use its own energy in tendons, ligaments, and muscles to push out of the surface. This is also a strain on the respiratory system. An active and springy surface with ideal rebound returns energy to the horse at the same rate it was applied. This reduces the horse's need to use its own additional energy for momentum. Rebound time is dependent on how the surface is used. For example, dressage versus jumping. The tightness of the surface affects grip. Grip aids in absorbing shock during the landing phase and provides support and traction during push-off and on turns. Too much grip stops the foot too quickly. The full use of the horse's stride is restricted and risk of injury to bones and joints is increased. The extreme tightness also prevents the toe from rotating into the surface for push-off, straining the leg and navicular region. A slippery surface allows for too much hoof slide. The lack of grip causes the hoof to push through the surface, decreasing propulsion. All of this lowers confidence and performance, putting safety at risk. The hoof must be allowed to slide during landing, stopping just enough for the ground to absorb impact forces. The tightness of the surface must provide stability for the horse during push-off and in turns without causing concussion or sliding. The amount of grip depends on how the surface will be used.
Next, I'd like to look at some different surfaces for different disciplines. We'll just cover this briefly. We'll take a look at jumping. Jumpers tend to like more stability and grip in the surface. Horses feel more confident when the surface is stable. You can see a bit of slide here on takeoff, just enough for the ground to absorb some energy. This surface has toe dip and grip at takeoff. On landing, there needs to be a bit of slide as well. Not much, but a bit. So the surface moves and absorbs some of the energy. We like using AutoSport base mats, and they're really useful at landing, at absorbing the concussion and energy. A dressage surface is similar to a jumping surface, maybe a little bit less tight. The horse has to carry so much more weight on his haunches than in other disciplines. A deep, loose surface would not allow for this type of precision. For horses to sit and carry this much on the hind end, they have to feel very confident that the ground will not break away. You can see here how stable and secure the surface needs to be in this elevated pirouette movement. This picture is worth 1,000 words. For reining and fast movement, the ground needs to absorb energy. This is a clear example of why one surface will not work for every discipline. Good footing, and how do we get it? A proper surface will support the skeletal and muscular systems of your equine athlete. However, all of this varies on the end use, discipline, traffic, maintenance, uses for the arena. Add that to the list of variables and you can see why footing and surfaces have become such a science. So you can see here, there's many things that will affect your surface in your arena. Today, I'm just going to focus on sand, footing products, water, professional installations, and maintenance. All about sand. This topic alone is vast and complicated. However, I will do my best to simplify it. Remember, there are over 10,000 different sand names that are used in the USA alone. It is very important to understand the qualities and specifications of a sand and not just go with a sand name. Sand is a key ingredient for obtaining a high-performance arena surface. However, not every kind of sand is suitable for all riding arenas. Choosing the wrong sand can create problems and be very expensive to replace. This is where our team struggles the most to help customers whom have bought their sand first, then call us to order their product. In most cases, we cannot help people when they have purchased the wrong sand. Pending traffic, discipline, grooming, climate, and the water situation, your sand and additive will need to be formulated and engineered, hence sand being the most important part of this equation. Sand definition. Sand is a general term for broken down granules of rock. It only pertains to size. Sand can have many different minerals or even organic matters. How they define sand is by its size only. So you can see here we have gravel, sand, and then little bitty silt. And at this point, the clay particles not even visible on this scale. Again, remember there's over 10,000 different sand names used in the US alone. Here's another picture. Here's what gravel might look like in its sizes: coarse sand, medium sand, fine sand, and superfine sand, or superfine, which would be constituted as silt or clay. Sand gradations are measured through a set of mesh sieves. The variation in percentages of different particle sizes is called a gradation. A sample of sand is placed atop a mesh with a variety of size openings. When the mesh is shaken, smaller pieces pass through the mesh, while the larger pieces are retained on the mesh. This technique is how a gradation report is achieved. The first thing we like to look for, that I think is the most important, and it will vary from different builders to builders, but are the sand size and gradation or grading we find to be the most important when choosing a sand. A well-graded sand, medium range of large to small particles will help keep footing firm but not compacted. So it's not necessarily large, but just different sizes, so you can see those particles fit into the voids. Uniformly graded or round particles with little to no gradation will become very unstable. There's nothing in there to keep the little ball bearings from rolling around. Gap graded is when you have large particles and very small particles. And what happens here, the finer material will always settle, pushing the larger particles up. And sometimes if the particles are too fine, they'll settle and make a fault space while the top of the surface will remain loose. Gradation reports. Here's an example of a gradation report. Different disciplines will require different gradations. Different types of footing additives will require specific gradations. Particle size and grading will help us to determine if the sand is suitable for the intended additive and the end use. Professional aggregate producers will have reports on their products. We have specific recipes for our footing products. By using these reports, we can duplicate good footing in all areas of the country. By choosing a pit that maintains reports, you are assured of getting the correct sand. Reports will verify what the gradation is, and if it's a reputable company, it will be within 5% of that report. Building engineers and architects that build dams, roads, foundations, mines, they have to have specific gradations to prevent failure. Your arena also needs specific materials to prevent failure. Mineralogy. This is the second most important piece. There are roughly 3,800 main minerals in the world and approximately 30 to 50 new minerals each year. Fluorite, gypsum, magnetite, copper, silica, quartz, mica, and pyrite are just a few of the many names. We recommend silica sand when at all possible, which is made from quartz because of its hardness. If you look at a diamond, it's a 10. Your quartz and silica is going to fall between a 6 and a 7. By using a hard particle sand, horse hooves, climate, and maintenance will not break the particles down as quickly, therefore preserving the gradation that was specified for your arena. Silica sand is composed of almost pure quartz grains. Quartz or silicon dioxide is one of the most common minerals found in the Earth's surface. Almost all sand has a presence of silica. In pure silica, the grains are usually round to subangular because all of the other soft minerals have eroded off. Silica sand is extremely resistant to weathering and crushing. Silica sand will have a hardness of 6 to 7. Clay particles are sometimes microscopic, or pretty much all the time microscopic. They can hold a lot of water and become soft and slippery when wet. When dry, clay becomes very hard. Think of pottery. If you've ever done a spinning wheel and played with pottery, that's pure clay. Clay can form rock-like particles in the surface. Early footing designs contained large amounts of clay because of their ability to hold water and keep substance in the sand. It did hold some of the sands together. However, they can become very dusty when not watered. Western disciplines still rely heavily on clay mixes, as well as baseball diamonds and other athletic venues. The new engineered surfaces for jumping and dressage do not use clay because the fine particles will clog the elaborate drainage systems. Particle shape is very important. We've placed it as third because if the gradation's good, we can override some of the angular particles with the synthetic additives. But round particles will create voids. They do offer cushioning and enhanced drainage. However, they are typically very unstable. There's too many voids, so they tend to roll around. Round particles are created by rolling and tumbling of water, for example, rivers and oceans. Subangular particles have the sharp edges worn off. They will nest while still allowing for some movement. This is an erosional sand from wind and rain. Angular particles have sharp edges and fit together tightly. Angular particles will compact and become hard. Most angular particles are man-made from crushing rocks. Particle shapes an important role in the final surface. Footing additives. We've seen a lot of those. Synthetic materials enhance and amend sand characteristics. Some of the materials, we have textiles and fibers. rubbers and foam, wood products, saps, which are super absorbent polymers, flocculants, waxes, and polymers. Textiles and fibers retain moisture and stabilize loose sand particles. They create a rooting system which feels similar to turf without being slippery. This is sometimes referred to as an on-top footing. They require very fine sand, very fine to medium sand, and need a specific gradation. So textiles and fibers will stabilize, retain moisture. They feel similar to turf, require very fine to medium sand. Some materials might require no sand. For the most part, they're made of polyester and nylon. Recycled textiles and fibers. So there's many ways that we get footing, textiles and fibers from footing. It's through the recycling industry. Here's some of the pieces that you can get. Post-consumer waste, these are products that are recycled after the consumer. Industrial waste are trimmings off of newly made materials. Premier Equestrian textile footing, we only use new materials, industrial waste. The textile recycling industry is huge here in the USA. We are one of the largest textile recyclers in the world. Many other countries do not allow post-consumer waste in their landfills. Therefore, some of the materials get turned into textile footing. There is no footing police identifying these products. Many of the foreign footing materials offered by competitors are made with post-consumer waste. These can contain chemicals, bacteria, viruses, and a host of many other contaminants. Our company only recycles footing products to certain standards. Our textile footing processes only use newly made materials. We have SDS reports on all our products, and each formula is the same every time. Our products are safe, functional, and we are the true textile footing supplier that has safety and function at the forefront of our materials. We're looking out for you and your horse's health. Rubbers and foams. Rubber enhances sands that compact too tightly by creating voids, thus adding cushioning. Rubber products are still used where sand options and water is limited. So rubbers and foams give you cushion and rebound. They don't stabilize. They'll open your sand up. It prevents compaction. These products require sharp, well-graded sand or very fine packing sand. Many of the products are made with tires, athletic shoes, yoga mats, gym mats, stable mats, wire coatings, and rubber stamps. Wood products. They do create cushion and rebound. They retain moisture. They're made of wood. They work with a variety of sands. Probably the downside is that they change consistently pretty rapidly. They break down quickly. Wood footing materials have fallen out of popularity due to the rapid rate they decompose and become dusty. But they are still an option in some parts of the country where wood is readily available. Saps and flocculants. They retain moisture, cut down on watering, dust control, and they work with a variety of sands. They're made of polyacrylamide. Super absorbent polymers can be found in makeup, dermal fillers, and baby diapers. Flocculants have been used in the fracking industry to coagulate the particles back together so they can siphon clean water off the top. You can see in the little video playing how the flocculant will actually bind the microscopic particles back together. Flocculants are also used in water purification. It binds bacteria and microscopic debris so it can easily be trapped by filters. They're useful in binding dust particles back together in your arena as well. Waxes and polymers. These waterless footings usually require no moisture or water. They're low maintenance. They're dust-free. They have an even consistency. They're pre-mixed at a factory and then custom installed. They are a bit sensitive to temperature. They thin out a little bit in the heat and they can stiffen more when it's cold. Water is one of the key ingredients for good footing. It is the same consistency from 33 degrees to 211 degrees. Water is sticky and clumps things together. because of its cohesive properties, surface tension, and the polarity of the positive and negative charges of hydrogen and oxygen atoms. These factors make water molecules attracted to other substances. It's difficult to build a sandcastle without water. It's difficult to have good footing without water. I tell customers all the time, when you go to the beach, do you jog at the top of the beach or do you jog at the water line? And that'll give you an idea of what water does for your surface. Just in the same way water will help hold sand together, it is also crucial in keeping synthetic additives in sand particles bound. You can see here that when it's dry, the products will separate. So I want to identify a little bit of what we do when we go to a surface and the first thing that I look for. This is how I identify a quality surface. If you look at A, the elongation of the hoof print indicates that the hoof has slid forward through the surface material. Although there is a small amount of slide, it is enough for the ground to absorb a majority of the force during landing and loading. Toe dip, B. The surface allowed the toe to dip, yet provided sufficient support and shear resistance for the hoof to push off without slipping. Toe dip reduces stress on the deep digital flexor tendon and its check ligaments and helps the horse to not fall on his forehand. On a compacted surface, the toe cannot dip in during push-off, which increases tension in the DDFT and puts extra pressure on the navicular and coffin bone. Sole support, C. The footing surface contains some voids which prevents too much compaction and allows for expansion into the hoof cavity and collateral grooves. This surface supports the sole of the hoof and provides additional support to the coffin bone. A compacted or dense surface will leave a void between the sole and the ground, so there's no support on the underside of the sole. When the coffin bone is loaded by the weight of the horse, this can result in thinning the soles. D is frog pressure. Here you see the imprint of the frog as it indents the surface. The support provided to the entire solar surface of the hoof enables the hoof mechanism to do its job. The hoof mechanism supports the circulatory system. Each time the hoof is loaded, blood rushes into the hoof. When the hoof is released, blood is pushed back up the leg. A healthy surface will support the hoof mechanism and the entire circulatory system. Construction and maintenance. I'm not going to go into too much depth because that's a really big topic, but I would like to look at some common types of arena bases. This is underneath the footing that a lot of builders will use. So the first one is a compacted stone base. It offers horizontal drainage, a free draining base, a base mat system, or an ebb and flow system. So a compacted base, you have your native soil and then the base layer, which consists of bluestone, limestone, granite, screenings, pressure fines, there's a number of packing materials. And then your footing on top. Your footing consists of the sand and maybe a footing product. These are designed for areas with less rainfall. Water goes down through the footing, then has to travel across the base layer to the outside of the ring. A free draining base will have the native soil, a drain field, drain rock, a separation cloth so that the sand and the rock don't mix, and the footing on top of that. The water will come down through the footing and drain vertically. So it will actually go through the separation cloth into the drain rock and then into the pipe. So these arenas drain very quickly and are used in heavy rain areas. Similar to a free draining base is an AutoSport mat system. We use the mat as the separation layer. The advantage there is that you get added benefits to the mat, concussion relief, and also water retention. And the knobs on the mats do help support and stabilize the upper level footing layer. The International Arena at the Palm Beach International Equestrian Center in Wellington, Florida, was installed last year with the AutoSport base mat system. This provided a state-of-the-art surface for competition and high traffic. The ebb and flow system. This is consistent hydration. They use less water and it's a turnkey system. The Arion Smart Arena ebb and flow is our newest system. Ebb and flow systems are watered from underneath. The water is whipped to the top of the surface, creating consistent hydration across the whole surface. A computer monitors the hydration levels, which are regulated by pumps. These pumps will fill or evacuate water such as rain and keep the surface hydration at an optimum level at all times. These systems use less water and are a great solution for drought areas. Maintenance. The final key to getting good footing. One of the other analogies I like to use is if you go out and buy a Grand Prix horse, you don't stick him in his stall and then pull him out right before the horse show, but he gets worked and conditioned every day. Your arena needs the same type of maintenance every day. Watering. Again, water is very important. There's several ways we can get water, either natural rainfall, sprinklers, water trucks or water wagons, or with an ebb and flow arena. Grooming. Why is it important to groom? Remember how we talked about the sand particle gradation. We need to keep that gradation mixed. The smaller pieces sink and push larger pieces up, which can build up false spaces and then a loose top surface. There are all types of equipment. Be sure you're using one designed for your specific surface and footing. I can't express enough the importance of having a proper footing surface for your equine partner. I personally think twice about what surfaces I expose my horses to for training. Thank you for joining us today and happy riding. The first question by Nicole, it says, are there any health risks related with silica sand? All right, this is a huge question. We get asked this all the time. Again, remember, 80% of the Earth's crust is silica. If you're breathing dust, you're breathing silica. In the Midwest, the farmers got something called farmer's lung before they had closed cab tractors. And that's from them plowing the fields and breathing all that dust, and they did get silicosis. The EPA and OSHA warnings that you get on a silica sand is for fracking and sandblasting. Horse hooves do not break silica sand down. It's a very sharp or very hard particle, and it's in those industries that they need the warnings because they are sharding the particle for sandblasting and fracking. You know, if you get a sand, be sure you're not getting a sand with dust, and that's why the gradations are so important. Out of the 3 different types of particles, which one is the best for hunter-jumper discipline? Is it the angular particle? So again, subangular is used most of the time, and you can do an angular particle. So as a rule of thumb, and a lot of the sand you get, you're kind of dependent on what's in your area. You know, for instance, if you go to the Northeast, there's a lot of volcanic material there. Very little silica is available. And so some of the people have to truck it in. And the volcanic material is not a great product to use for footing. Florida is a great place for footing because the whole peninsula is pretty much nice silica sand. And so you are kind of stuck. That's why we have footing product additives, because they will enhance the sand quality. So for instance, if you get a sharp angular packing material and that's all that's available in your area and you can't afford to truck it in from 8 hours away, that's where the rubbers and foams are great, because you'll get your traction and grip from the angular particle, yet you'll get your cushioning from the additive. Same thing if you have a loose round sand. In many cases, that can be bound up with textile and fibers. So if you had to choose, would it be better to have a footing that is a little too deep or a little too hard? What is harder on the horse? I personally, and this is a personal preference, would rather ride my horse on asphalt than in deep footing. I mean, deep footing causes so many tissue injuries. And again, let's go back. You guys, I tell people, go to the top of the beach and jog or do ballet or Tai Chi every day for 50 minutes and let me know how you feel. Don't go to the water line. It's very strenuous, and it really lowers the horse's confidence. I think a hard surface is better for him, but it comes with its share of problems as well. Good question. What is the normal lifespan of a dressage arena? Fiber and sand for personal use, approximately 10 rides per week. And at which point should you replace either sand and or fiber? So that's a really good question, because obviously the sand, what kind of sand you get, if you get a soft mineral, then that sand will break down. And many of you may have had this experience. I got new sand, it was beautiful. And a year later, where did all this dust come from? And that's from the sand particles breaking down. So if you get a good sand and a good fiber mix at 10 rides per week, your sand should last 10 to 15 years, if not longer. You will add fiber probably after 5 or 6 years. You won't add the same amount, but you will refresh it. Is there a way to redo footing if the top is okay, but the base is too hard? Basically, the base is always hard. That's why you want a solid, hard, firm base, and then you put your footing mix on top is where you get the biomechanics. If you have an arena already built, but it needs to be fixed, is there a possibility of working with what you have, or is it best to start over? That would have to be looked at by a contractor or builder. A lot of times bases fail, and then at that point you have to scrape all the sand off, and then you'll have to go in and either add material, re-roll the base and re-laser grade it, and then put your footing back on top of it. You may need to add a drainage system. That's going to be done on a case-by-case basis. Somebody wants to know what our consultation process looks like. That's actually an interesting question. So what we do is we have a series of questions we ask you, and it has to do with your climate, it has to do with your riding discipline, it has to do with your budget. And, not every one of us can go out and have an arena like, they do at the horse shows. In fact, most of us can't. And I've always felt like if we can even improve the surface, that's helpful. So a lot of times, you're kind of, I think people get nervous that, footing is going to cost me an astronomical amount. It doesn't have to. There's different processes and different levels. We can improve most footing, and sometimes for not very much money. I mean, for about the price of a saddle, many arenas can be enhanced. I'm not going to say they're perfect, but they will be much better than maybe what you had before. So our process will ask you a series of questions. If you have an existing arena, we offer free sand testing. We have a lab, and we bring your sand in, we test it, we look at the gradation, the particle size, and we can apply either to add new sand or add a product or additive that will enhance that sand. Most of what we see is your common sands that most people order, because this is what the Department of Transportation needs for roads and freeways and buildings, is your Mason sand and your concrete sands. And that's just what usually is available in the area. So we do have products that will amend those sands. They're not the perfect sand, but they can be amended to be a nice sand. Okay, so for an arena used for both jumping and dressage, what is the depth of footing would you recommend? So we recommend, depending on the traffic and the water situation and how many rides a day and at what level. If you're jumping, 4.5 foot jumps consistently, we would require a little deeper footing surface. We'd amend it a little deeper. So anywhere from 3 to 4 inches. In some cases, some of the horse shows will go 5 inches and just add more fiber. But some of the horse shows, those surfaces are getting 300 to 400 rounds a day. So you want to make sure that you've got enough footing to get everybody some fair competition. My sand has been tested by us, and it has about 85% coarse sand. So I'm a bit by bit adding finer sand. Do you have a new product that works especially well with coarser sand? We do have a new product called All Purpose. And what it is, it's a fiber product, and it's very forgiving. It's not perfect, but it definitely will bind up the bigger, looser particles. Again, it's not like if you have perfect, beautiful, graded silica sand and footing, but it's a huge improvement and will help the footing to not be so deep and wiggly. Can you give me an example of a flocculant? Flocculant's interesting. It's just negatively charged, the flocculant, the polymers. Here's the best example. In Singapore, I was reading that because of their water process, they recycle all their water and they use a flocculant. So what happens, this polymer, which looks like salt, basically, goes in the water and it's negatively charged, and it attracts the bacteria and the debris and all that stuff. It binds it back together so it becomes a larger coagulated piece. And at that point, it gets stuck in the filter fabric, so just pure water can go through. So that's how a flocculant works. And it works in your arena the same way. It's interesting. You can put it in. You need to add water. It needs to be moist to activate. But it will actually bind dust particles back together into a large particle, broken down pieces. It's an interesting product. Giving the image of what you look for in good footing, the ABC slide, what are the differences you would look for in jump arenas versus dressage arenas? Jumping arenas and dressage arenas are very similar. For instance, our partners in Germany, AutoSport, they did the Rio Olympics. And we've all seen that the jumping surface and the dressage surface are basically the same surface. They're groomed slightly differently. I would say that the jumpers, just because it's a little more force, they tend to be groomed a little tighter, maybe a little more compact than dressage. Dressage can be slightly less loose, but both jumping and dressage riders tend to like very similar surfaces. Is subangular sand masonry sand? Is there a type of sand that you can ask for to make sure that it's subangular, or it is the best sand to use for an analysis? And again, never use a name. If the reason that your sand pit says it's arena sand is because Fred down the road put it in his arena. Most of your sand pits have no idea what jumping or dressage is. And so never ask for a name. Always get a report, and we will look at the reports and we can tell. Again, if it's a water sand and they got it out of a river or the ocean, it's going to probably be a round particle. If it's an erosional sand where they mined out of a pit or the side of a mountain or a hill, it's probably going to be subangular. Your man-made sands are going to be angular, because they're crushed. They take rocks and crush them down to sand size. So again, I wouldn't look for a name of a sand. Mason sands are not a bad sand to look for because they tend to be a finer sand, but it varies all over the country from pit to pit, which is why we like to look at the reports. Our arena is used primarily for driving and dressage, not jumping or reining. What characteristics do I need to seek in my base and in my footing? Again, a professional built base or a hard base, one of the four we described, either a compacted stone base or a free draining base, something solid. And then for driving and dressage, when you're driving, I would think, now I'm not a driving expert, but I would think a little stiffer surface, something you're not sinking in, would be a better outcome for driving, and the same for dressage. You don't want your surface tight, but it's firm. maybe feels like a mat, or like I try to tell people, horses evolved on grasslands. Their foot, everything's designed for grass, not for deep beaches or rocky mountains. Their hoof, the way it was developed, they galloped out onto the grasslands. And so if when the grass is nice and you're riding on top of it, it's a good surface if it's, not too slippery. So I would say that for driving and dressage, it would be comparable to have the same type of surface. So I think that's it. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Miranda. And thank you all for joining me. And I appreciate all the questions.
All right. Well, I would like to first thank Heidi Zorn for such a informative, really, really excellent presentation. I mean, I myself learned so much. It's really fascinating and really getting into like the nitty gritty. I love it. And that's why we're all here to learn. So it's excellent. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you to Premier Equestrian for your very generous sponsorship of this session. Thank you so much, Heidi and Premier Equestrian. It's been very informative and excellent. Thanks so much. Goodbye.